Hi.
Versus.
It's versus. Um, so we're going to be doing
Volume 3, Part 3, Episode 3.
episode 3. We're going to be reviewing Captain Beefheart.
And his magic band, Trout Masked Replica. And I couldn't find the record because everything's jumbled up right now, so there's what the cover looks like. Isn't it awesome? It has 28 tracks on it.
He does own this record, by the way.
And it's a double album.
But like you said, it's all like we did get moved, but and so we're kind of like in our new place now. But everything's not where it needs to be. So he tried to find the record but could not. So
Oh well.
At least you got to see what it looked like.
Life goes on.
It does. So, as I always say, these are just our opinions. You're more than welcome to agree or disagree. But we're going to discuss this record, and who knows, we may not agree.
Yeah, these are just our opinions, and we're always right, so just remember that.
Yeah, I'm not always right.
I am.
Well, I don't know about that either.
Yeah. So, I think I'm more familiar with this artist or this record than she is, just because I was the one that picked it. That's usually the case, but not always. So, if you're not familiar with Captain Beefheart, he's like a blues-influenced, avant-garde, experimental type artist. He started in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. And his music is an acquired taste. It's not for everyone. And some people probably couldn't listen to it if they tried. And then other people like me, for example, are drawn to the unusual. And that's definitely that category.
I'd have to agree with that as well.
Yeah.
I found this to be the best way I can describe this record is like parts of it are really good and parts of it are not so good, but it was kind of like I was taking an acid trip
Without the acid.
Without the acid. And that's honestly how I felt. Some of it is him talking and it's all mumbo jumbo, rhymes, poetry. Some of it is him singing, and the part that I totally enjoyed was the singing part. The poetry wasn't so god-awful bad, but the other part where he's just mumbling.
Well, he describes that as a stream of consciousness.
Couldn't grasp that.
Yeah, he was friends with Frank Zappa.
That explains a lot.
And Frank Zappa produced this album, Trout Masked Replica, because I think it was Captain Beefheart's third record, and he was dropped by 2 record labels previous to that. And so he was picked up by Frank Zappa's Straight Records, and this was produced by Frank and then released on that label. But I guess it was under very strict conditions. Captain Beefheart, his name that's not his real name. It's Van Fleet, what's his name? Oh, I can't think of anything. Anyway, his band, they stayed in this little house and rehearsed and recorded for, I don't remember how many months it was, several months. And he didn't feed them anything but just beans. And he wouldn't let them go anywhere. And he was like really a control freak and really obsessive about it. And Frank Zappa said that his initial reaction to what Captain Beefheart wanted to do, as far as how he wanted to record a song, not to take away from the experimental aspect of it, but he wanted him to make it sound cohesive with all the other tracks, as far as fidelity. And I guess the unconventional way that Beefheart wanted to record was not what Frank would have done, but he said, I just stepped back and let him do it the way he wanted to do it. So not too many producers, I think, would do that, and I think that's probably why the album turned out so good, in my opinion, because that's what happened.
I could honestly listen to this record, and I have more than once. But I don't see it as something that I personally would go to as a record to put on my turntable and listen to for enjoyment purposes.
But you would like to own it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind owning it. I could see myself listening to it if the mood struck me, so to speak. But it's not something that would be a go-to record. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's definitely not classic rock in the sense of the word.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. Didn't Frank and Captain Beefheart make records together?
Yeah, they did. Bongo Fury, I think, was the one. And then it seems like there was another one. And by the way, his name is Don Van Fleet. Van Fleet. I couldn't think of his first name. And all the tracks are good, by my opinion, because I just like that kind of stuff. Like I said, there's 28 tracks altogether, and if you're not familiar with this album and you want to check some of it out, or better yet, if you want to listen to it all the way through, would be my personal opinion to do that.
You almost have to listen to it all the way through to understand what's going on the record.
It helps. But I mean, if you want to just check out a few tracks, I would suggest Pachuco Cadaver is a good one. And Moonlight on Vermont is a good one. And Pena is a good one. It's just P-E-N-A. That's like one of the standout tracks as far as stream of consciousness, like I was saying, because it's just, you hear a lot of things going on. And in a lot of these songs, you hear a lot of things going on at once. And it almost sounds at first listen just like a bunch of noise. But that's what experimental music is.
Honestly, I had to listen to this several times to grasp it. Listening to it the first time around, I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I like this, and I'm not sure if I don't. So I had to listen to it and really let it sink in, really listen to what the words were that were being spoken or sung, to really grasp what was going on, to really understand.
How would you describe the music?
Where he was coming from.
To people that's never heard
the actual singing part?
Well, just all of it in general. How would you describe the album if you were going to say?
Well, I did say that it felt like I was on an acid trip.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it's a song. It's like a song, maybe him talking for a little bit, then maybe poetry, then another song, then him talking. I mean, it doesn't flow like this. It flows like this. It's kind of jumpy. You really, without listening to it and really listening to it a couple of times, you really don't or can't grasp. If you listen to it one time and go, no, you're really not understanding where he's coming from and what he's trying to accomplish on the record. That's the way I viewed it.
Well, he's an eccentric person in general from a lot of things that I've read. So I think this is just an extension of his, because he was a painter later in life. He did a lot of painting. And when he retired from music altogether before he died, quite a few years he would just painted. That's all he did. And I think the music was it got to a point where it was too tedious or too much work, or it turned out it wasn't really what he wouldn't get anything out of it probably. But as far as this album, the thing I like about it, there's a lot of things, but the one thing I noticed right away is you can't really tell when they're, like if you record a song and you take 5 takes to get it right, a lot of these songs, they sound like they begin in the wrong place and they end in the wrong place, and there's people talking in the beginning before the song actually starts, and I'm sure that was just because they didn't care or they did it on purpose. Could be a little bit of both. And I like that because music later in the 90s got to be like that, to where they didn't have to end a song all at the same time, or they didn't have to be on key and in tune all the time and sing everything just perfect. So, I know that this album, or Captain Beefheart as an artist, has influenced a lot of other artists and a lot of other people, because Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, says it's one of his favorite albums of all time, and he had to listen to it numerous times before he appreciated it and realized, oh, they're doing this on purpose. They're not just terrible musicians, they're great musicians, they're doing it on purpose, they're trying to sound like this. And Rolling Stone said it was one of the top 500 best albums of all time. So, you have to be your own judge and listen to it.
You have to experience it for yourself. There's really no way for me or for him to describe what is on the grooves of that vinyl. You really just have to experience it for yourself. I will say this, I really felt like he was trying to get a message across when I was listening to it. There were some common factors in some of the songs, so regardless if maybe he was on an acid trip or because of the year that this was recorded.
It came out in 69, June of 69.
So, I don't know if he was into drugs or anything, but
I don't think he needed any.
Most of the artists around that time were experimenting with drugs, so...
Well, I think that's also part of, because I'd read in different articles about like Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa and Bonzo Dog Band and some of these others, that they didn't fit into the hippie, movement or generation. Even the hippies strayed away from, it was too weird for them, I guess. But I think in the late 60s, whether it be drug related or drug influenced or not, I think everyone could go in every direction. And it was almost sort of normal in some ways to experiment and try new instruments and new ways to write a song, and it wasn't just the traditional. And then once again that picked up with alternative music in the late 80s, early 90s, especially after grunge, for lack of a better term, became popular. Then it's like that opened the doors for any kind of music to be considered listenable, when a couple years previous it wouldn't have been. So I think that Captain Beefheart was just unappreciated at the time because it just fell off the radar, more than likely. And if it hadn't been for the Frank Zappa connection somehow, it might not even have got as notable as it did, which wasn't much.
I would have to agree with that.
I mean, it's more popular now just because it's a cult album, and it's an essential album that a music lover should have. Whether you are a big fan of this artist or not, it's just like one of those albums that is, well, if you go by Rolling Stone, I mean, a lot of people don't appreciate what anything Rolling Stone has to say, but there is some credibility on my part for them to include that album in the top 500 of all time. I mean, they must know a little bit about music.
I have to say that when I was listening to this, I did get some flashbacks of Jim Morrison from The Doors, especially when he was in his little conscious talking, whatever you want to call it, videos that I've seen of Jim Morrison. It kind of reminded me of that, of Jim just rattling off what was coming to his mind, and this record reminded me of that.
It's similar.
That's what it reminded me of. So I did have some flashbacks of that. So, I guess in all, I would probably give this, I'd say probably 5 spins.
Well, I will say that as much as I like off-the-wall type music, I do have to be in the mood for this one. And I'm not always in that mood, mainly because I listen to so much different kinds of music and I jump around a lot. But I will say that I'll give it 10 spins out of 10 just because it's if I had to pick out X amount of albums that either a music lover has to own or ones that I have to have, that would be one of them. So just that being said, it would be a 10 out of 10 for me.
So our next verses, which will not be next Sunday, it'll be the following Sunday. We're going to be reviewing, and I've been the drum roll. I've been tossing around 2 artists.
Literally.
Juggling. So I'm still so undecided.
Can you do both, or is it 2 different? It's 2 different artists or 2 different albums.
It's 2 different artists.
Are they related in any way?
No.
Well, we can't do 2, I guess, because that's sort of bending everything in half.
So I think I'm gonna go with, my gut says Ellie King. So we're going to be reviewing Ellie King for our next verses.
Well,
I really like her too. Interesting to see what he has to say. All right. Thanks for watching and subscribing, commenting. Please leave all those comments down below.
And check out the artists that we review in each episode of Verses. Go back and watch the first couple that we've made up to this point. You might discover something new, and you might, like she says, rediscover an artist that you maybe forgot about.
Absolutely. So we'll see you next time.
Yep.